Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Today we start another topic talking about the magic word for turning dreams into reality. Are you ready? Let's start together. Let me give you some keys to discipline. Start with the little things and work up to the big ones. The little things are minor things you can do to make your life better and make you feel better about yourself. Make a list of them. Life will give you some pretty big challenges. But unless you practice on the small ones and master those, you don't have a chance on the major ones. A man tried out of his house to go straighten out the corporation, and he has not yet straightened out his garage. Who's he so work on all the disciplines, small as well as large, that will improve the quality of your life. And here is an important thought. Everything affects everything else. Every lack of discipline affects every other discipline. Mistakenly, the man says, "This is the only area I failed." It's obvious that's not true. Every failure, no matter how small, affects the rest of your performance. Nowhere is the positive side. Every new discipline affects every other discipline. Every new thing you try affects the rest of your performance. Isn't that exciting? So get started on every small discipline you can think of. You can't believe what it will do for your self-confidence. Remember, the greatest deterrent to success is lack of self-confidence. And lack of self-confidence comes from not doing what you could do. Next comes self-motivation. Really, that's the only kind of motivation there is. I was on lecture tour in Australia not long ago, and the press interviewed me. They asked, "Mr. Rohn, are you one of those American motivators?" I said, "No, I'm a businessman. I can share my ideas and my experiences, but people have got to motivate themselves. I've discovered that you can't change people. They can change themselves, but you can't change them. Lord knows I've tried. I had a super group of salespeople back in those early days. I said, I'm going to make them successful if it kills me. Guess what? I almost did. It can't be done. Good people are found, not changed. If you want good people, you have to find them. That's the best answer I can give you. If you want motivated people, you have to find them, not motivate them. The first rule of management is this: don't send your ducks to Eagle School. Why? Because it won't work. I've tried it all. I picked up a magazine not long ago in New York that had a full-page ad in it for a hotel chain. The first line of the ad was, "We do not teach our people to be nice." Now that got my attention. The second line said, "We simply hire nice people." I thought, what clever shortcut. Motivation is a mystery. Why are some people motivated and some are not? Why does one salesperson see his first prospect at 7 in the morning, while another sees his first prospect at 11 in the morning? Why would one start at 7 and the other start at 11? I don't know. I call it mysteries of the mind. I give lectures to 1,000 people at a time. One walks out and says, "I'm going to change my life." Someone else walks out with a yawn and says, "I've heard all this stuff before." Why is that? Why aren't they both affected to the same extent? I don't know. Mysteries of the mind. The wealthy man says to 1,000 people, "I read this book, and it started me on the road to wealth." Guess how many of the 1,000 go out and get the book? Answer: very few. Isn't that incredible? Why wouldn't everyone go get the book? Mysteries of the mind. To one person, you have to say, "You'd better slow down. You can't work that many hours, do that many things. You're going to have a heart attack and die." And to another person, you have to say, "When are you ever going to get off the couch?" What is the difference? It's called mysteries of the mind. Why wouldn't everyone strive to be wealthy and happy? I don't know. Mysteries of the mind. So be self-motivated. Don't give that job away to someone else. The guy says, "Boy, if someone will just come by and turn me on." Hey, what if he doesn't show up? You've got to have a better plan for your life. You've got to have discipline. Doing your best. I've got a good question for you. Is the best you can do all you can do? Strangely enough, the answer is no. Imagine dropping to the floor right now and doing as many push-ups as you possibly can, and let's say for some reason you haven't been doing any push-ups lately, so the best you can do is 5. But is 5 all you can ever do? The answer is no. If you rest a little, you can do 5 more. And if you rest a little more, you can do 5 more. How did we get from 5 to 15? It's a miracle. If you continue that pattern, is it possible to get up to 50 push-ups? Of course. How do you go from 5 to 50? It's a miracle. So how do you get that miracle going? It's all a matter of discipline. And it begins with one simple step: doing what you can do. Once you have done that, you can keep working to bring your best to a higher level. Each time you complete an activity and take a rest, you're preparing yourself for even greater accomplishment. But here is a note of caution: don't rest too long. Why? Because the weeds can take over the garden. You've probably noticed that kids have that figured out. Here's how they keep things moving. They take rest as necessity, not an objective. The objective of life is not to rest. The objective of life is to act, to think of more disciplines. Think of more ways and means to use your own wisdom, your own philosophy. Use your own attitude, your own faith, your own courage, your own commitment, your own desires, your own excitement. Invest yourself in discipline so your talents are not wasted. The smallest of disciplines can thereby transform your life. Join that small percentage of truly disciplined people and discover what your best truly is. Reaping a multiple reward. For every disciplined effort, there are multiple rewards. That's one of life's great arrangements. In fact, it's an extension of that biblical law that says that if you sow well, you will reap well. Here's a unique part of the law of sowing and reaping. Not only does it suggest that we'll all reap what we've sown, it also suggests that we'll reap much more. Life is full of laws that both govern and explain behaviors. But this may well be the major law we need to understand. For every disciplined effort, there are multiple rewards. What a concept! If you render unique service, your reward will be multiplied. If you're fair and honest and patient with others, your reward will be multiplied. If you give more than you expect to receive, your reward is more than you expect. But remember, the key word here, as you might well imagine, is discipline. Everything of value requires care, attention, and discipline. Children require discipline. They must have a structure built for them. They must have boundaries to work within so they feel secure and comfortable to explore and grow. They must learn to recognize what's right and what's wrong, what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable. Children require constant and consistent discipline. Otherwise, they'll be confused as to how they're supposed to behave. Likewise, our thoughts require discipline. We must consistently determine our inner boundaries and our codes of conduct, or our thoughts will be confused. And if our thoughts are confused, we will become hopelessly lost in the maze of life. Confused thoughts produce confused results. Remember the law: for every disciplined effort, there are multiple rewards. Learn the discipline of writing a card or a letter to a friend. Learn the discipline of paying your bills on time, arriving to appointments on time, or using your time more effectively. Learn the discipline of paying attention, or paying your taxes, or paying yourself. Learn the discipline of having regular meetings with your associates, or your spouse, or your child, or your parent. Learn the discipline of learning all you can learn, of teaching all you can teach, of reading all you can read. For each discipline, multiple rewards. For each book, new knowledge. For each success, new ambition. For each challenge, new understanding. For arch failure, new determination. Life is like that. Even the bad experiences of life provide their own special contribution. But a word of caution here for those who neglect the need for care and attention to life's disciplines. Everything has its price. Everything affects everything else. Neglect discipline, and there will be a price to pay. All things of value can be taken for granted with the passing of time. That's what we call the law of familiarity. Without the discipline of paying constant daily attention, we take things for granted. Be serious. Life's not a practice session. If you're often inclined to toss your clothes onto the chair rather thinning them in the closet, be careful. It could suggest a lack of discipline. And remember, a lack of discipline in the small areas of life can cost you heavily in the more important areas of life. You cannot clean up your company until you learn the discipline of cleaning your garage. You cannot be impatient with your children and be patient with your distributors or your employees. You cannot inspire others to sell more when that goal is inconsistent with your own conduct. You cannot admonish others to read good books when you don't have a library card. Think about your life at this moment. What areas need attention right now? Perhaps you've had a disagreement with someone you love or someone who loves you, and your anger won't allow you to speak to that person. Wouldn't this be an ideal time to examine your need for a new discipline? Perhaps you're on the brink of giving up, or starting over, or starting out. And the only missing ingredient to your incredible success story in the future is a new and self-imposed discipline that will make you try harder and work more intensely than you ever thought. The most valuable form of discipline is the one that you impose upon yourself. Don't wait for things to deteriorate so drastically that someone else must impose discipline into your life. Wouldn't that be tragic? How could you possibly explain the fact that someone else thought more of you than you thought of yourself? That they forced you to get up early and get out into the marketplace, when you would have been content to let success go to someone else who cared more about themselves. Your life, my life, the life of each one of us is going to serve as either a warning or an example. A warning of the consequences of neglect, self-pity, lack of direction and ambition, or an example of talent put to use, of discipline self-imposed, and of objectives clearly perceived and intensely pursued. Like farmers, we all reap the fruits of what we have sown. For every disciplined effort, there are multiple rewards. Price versus promise. Our lives are affected by two major things. One is price, and the other is promise. And it's not that easy to pay the price if you can't see the promise. I think kids are having problems these days trying to pay the price because they can't see the promise. But nobody would mind paying the price if they could have a clear view of tomorrow next week, or next month, or next year. If we had the assurance that everything were going to work out, do you think we would hesitate to pay? The answer is no, but everybody hesitates if the future isn't clear. So we've got to do two things to help our kids. Help them see the promise and help them pay the price. It is so much easier to pay the price if we can see the promise. My karate instructor said, "Mr. Rohn, you cannot believe the incredible feeling of walking down any city street unafraid." I said, "Let's get on with the classes." I was willing to sweat. I was willing to put myself through the paces to achieve that feeling. What would you do for an extraordinary promise? The most unbelievable things. Would you crack the books? Would you burn the midnight oil? Would you engage in the extra thoughts and the extra disciplines if the promise were adequate? And the answer is, of course. But who wants to read? Who wants to burn the midnight oil? Who wants to put themselves through the paces if the promise isn't clear? Nobody. So do what it takes to discover what you truly want. Once you have seen and felt that ideal future, that promise of achievement, you will be ready and able to pay any price. The time to act. Engaging in genuine discipline requires that you develop the ability to take action. You don't need to be hasty if it isn't required, but you don't want to lose much time. Here's the time to act when the idea is hot and the emotion is strong. Let's say you would like to build your library. If that is a strong desire for you, what you've got to do is get the first book. Then get the second book. Take action as soon as possible, before the feeling passes and before the idea dims. If you don't, here's what happens. You fall prey to the law of diminishing intent. We intend to take action when the idea strikes us. We intend to do something when the emotion is high. But if we don't translate that intention into action fairly soon, the urgency starts to diminish. And a month from now, the passion is cold. A year from now, it can't be found. So take action. Set up a discipline when the emotions are high and the idea is strong, clear, and powerful. If somebody talks about good health and you're motivated by it, you need to get a book on nutrition. Get the book before the idea passes, before the emotion gets cold. Begin the process. Fall on the floor and do some push-ups. You've got to take action, otherwise the wisdom is wasted. The emotion soon passes unless you apply it to a disciplined activity. Discipline enables you to capture the emotion and the wisdom and translate them into action. The key is to increase your motivation by quickly setting up the disciplines. By doing so, you've started a whole new life process. Here's the greatest value of discipline: self-worth, also known as self-esteem. Many people who are teaching self-esteem these days don't connect it to discipline. But once we sense the least lack of discipline within ourselves, it starts to erode our psyche. One of the greatest temptations is to just ease up a little bit. Instead of doing your best, you allow yourself to do just a little less than your best. Sure enough, you've started in the slightest way to decrease your sense of self-worth. There's a problem with even a little bit of neglect. Neglect starts as an infection. If you don't take care of it, it becomes a disease. And one neglect leads to another. Worst of all, when neglect starts, it diminishes our self-worth. Once this has happened, how can you regain your self-respect? All you have to do is start with the smallest discipline that corresponds to your own philosophy. Make the commitment: I will discipline myself to achieve my goals so in the years ahead, I can celebrate my successes. Thanks you guys for take your time watching this video.